Okay, we are now live on Facebook. I want to welcome everybody who's here on the Zoom and everybody who is watching. This will be available for replay later on Facebook as well as on YouTube, and we'll link it to our website as well for replay for folks who don't have Facebook. But everybody watching right now live clearly does. I want to thank everyone for being here. This is purely for the purposes of being as completely transparent as possible, and also to give everybody as much information as possible. This is not a common thing we're doing tonight. Most cities don't do this. Most developers don't agree to do this. So I want to thank Mike Bradley for being here from Northside Homes, LLC. I want to thank the members of the Midway Affordable Housing Committee who are here tonight, Susan Cottingham, Freeland Davis, and Zon Hostetter. They may ask questions later, or they may not. They're here to listen just like we are. I'm going to make my screen go dark here in a minute as everyone else has theirs and leave it to Lori and Mike. But I want to introduce Lori Garkovich. She is our moderator this evening. Lori, thank you very much for agreeing to do this tonight. Lori is a Woodford County resident, though she doesn't live in Midway. We did that by design. She is a member of the Versailles Affordable Housing Committee, and she's also a member of the Agricultural Review Committee. So she's someone involved in the community who understands these issues we're talking about. Having said that, Lori, thanks so much. I'm going to turn it over to you for the rest of the evening. And Mike, if you have any screen sharing issues, we'll try to troubleshoot those as we go. And thank you both for agreeing to do this tonight. Lori, let you take it away.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Grayson, or Mayor Vandergrift. I just think of you as Grayson. So my name's Lori Garkovich, and I've lived in Woodford County since 1983. I'm a retired University of Kentucky College of Agriculture professor, where I worked for 42 years. I was a member of the Department of Community and Leadership Development. I taught, and I was a state extension specialist working in the area of community and leadership development. I've done quite a bit of facilitation of groups for different kinds of issues. What I wanted to do tonight was, because I see this as an informational exchange, I will be asking questions of Mike Bradley, representing Northside Homes LLC, to first get a sense of what their interests are and plans are, as much as they are at this point in their development process. And then I received several emails today while I was doing something else from residents who had questions about this proposal, from what they've heard based on the limited coverage of it at this point. And I have summarized those into a set of issues of concern and as suggestions for what people in the community hope would be considered as a development plan is designed, and the engineering, traffic, and other required considerations are processed in that design approach. So the way I want to do this is that I will ask the questions initially, and then at the end, if Mike is willing, ask him if any members of the Affordable Housing Committee to ask their questions. And then if it's permissible within the time frame, to see if any of the issues of concerns that I've identified, if I've missed something that members of the community want to make sure get entered in. I have a document that I've put together that I will be sending to the Affordable Housing Committee, and I'll send to Mike Bradley too, so that you have something concrete to see from this. I'll also be taking notes as we go forward. So I'm just asking that everybody keep their places, their mics on mute until we get to the point where there's an opportunity for individuals who want to ask something that hasn't been already addressed to do so. And finally, please remember that as far as I understand, this proposal is at this stage not fully developed. There are still, that it's in the planning idea stage, but there is not yet a concrete development plan for this property. Is that correct?
It was actually submitted to Planning Commission today. the key factor is the planning commission staff nor the technical review committee have had a chance to look it over and make the corrections they see that are needed. So those would be where the changes would come in.
Sorry, my dogs just went berserk. So Mike, let me just get us started by asking, tell us a little bit about yourself and what has led you to wanting to develop this property. For example, have you previously developed residential properties? And if so, what kinds? So just kind of give us a little bit of background about yourself and your company.
We have developed residential properties, mostly in Scott County, and in particular Stamping Ground. We developed a subdivision out there. And our connection to Midway is my parents, Chuck and Shirley Bradley, bought the corner grocery in '79. And we all grew up working there. And my partner in Northside Homes is Scott Bradley. He's been working at the grocery store there since '79, and he's owned it for the last 20 years and recently sold it about 6 months ago. And of course, that land next to the store has always been one of the things people looked at as a possible area of development in Midway, because Midway has very little development, and it has for years. I think Northside's probably the last major, or North Ridge is the last major development. And prior to that, it probably was Gayland, as far as I can remember. The two of us decided that rather than build a grocery store there, that it would probably be more useful and a little more beneficial to Midway to bring in some housing that people that are working in the industrial park and all the new jobs that are brought in can actually afford to live in. And that's our goal with this project. I think you're muted.
Can you describe for us kind of like what your vision is for this development? For example, the density, the kind of units, et cetera.
The density it's dense. It's R3. It's not the maximum. It's 68 units for the 8 acres that are there. I think the maximum was 82. So we came in lower than that. But it is a dense development. And unfortunately, that's what it takes to make a house affordable nowadays, with the cost going through the roof on just about everything. So these townhouses are kind of a hybrid of a single family home and a townhouse. They're not the typical design where all the faces are flat and facing forward and no gaps in between. We actually have, it looks like individual houses connected by breezeways, which are a covered patio in essence. And then one of the models that we've had so much interest in would take that breezeway and make it a third bedroom, which would be a first floor bedroom for those who didn't want the steps every day. So the design, and you can probably see behind me, but I've got a better picture in the presentation we're going to do that shows you the streetscape along North Ridge Drive. Those units will all have rear feeding driveways. The interior units will have front feeding driveways. But the North Ridge streetscape is going to look really nice. And if you'll see the picture of what we're envisioning as we go through.
So why don't you go ahead and do that? Because I did not realize you were going to have a presentation, but I'd love to see it. And I think everybody else would too.
Okay. And I'll go through it pretty quick, but it's maybe to generate some questions out of what we present. So let me see if I can share this thing properly. Let me know if you can see this. Is that good? All right. So this is the north side streetscape. This is what the houses would look like with rear feeding driveways. There's an access street behind there. You can notice that they're all divided by 10 to 14 feet. And in that is either a breezeway or a bedroom, depending on the model that we're building. The fences are part of the plan. The landscaping is going to be more up to planning and zoning's requirements than what we envision. So we'll work with with planning and zoning to come up with the landscape plan. But it's a very pretty streetscape. And if you look at the design of the houses and you roam around Midway a little bit, you'll see a lot of the shotgun houses that were there 100 years ago have a very similar style and character that this. And that's one of our goals, is we were trying to make this look Midway, not like the typical traditional townhouse that you would see around in Versailles or even in Midway now. So I'll go through. I wanted to clarify this, and I think Grayson probably did a good job of saying it. We have not yet been through technical review or the planning commission staff. So this may change. So nothing we're doing here is meant to be considered evidence or information to take into the June planning and zoning meeting. This is just for information purposes right now. The other thing is there seems to be some concern that we're developing a subsidized housing project in some way. This is absolutely not a subsidized project. We have no programs in place to provide us anything or the buyers anything. This is just designed to have a market price development that people who are making $40,000 or $50,000 a year can afford to buy. And that's kind of our goal. But it gets confused because affordable housing has so many meanings that a lot of times it gets mixed up with low income projects that maybe are different programs that they're out there doing. This is not that. This is a market price project. And just wanted to make that clear. And it's designed for individual owners to buy and to be able to take advantage of the equity they build over time. So here's the development plan, the complete layout. You see the detention basins in the dark green. The yellow parking spots are the owner spots, and the pink are guest parking. And I don't know if you can tell, but the corner grocery is up here in the corner, in the left corner, and then that's Northside Drive. And that's the basic layout as we have planned. The only thing that I don't know is you'll see dumpster areas here and here. Those are not decided. We don't know that we don't want individual collection yet. So that's still on the drawing board. But I know there'll be some more questions about that, and we can come back to that after we go through the rest of the presentation, because we could probably spend the whole time on that particular picture. But some of the stats, there's 68 units, 183 parking spots total. It's going to have the centralized mailboxes, which is a requirement of the post office now. The streets are going to be private. They'll remain private. They'll be taken care of by the HOA along with yard maintenance. So in the long term, because the HOA is taking care of the landscaping in the streets, the development's look will continue to be as good 10 years from now as it is today. So that's another one of our goals. The landscape and screening, we haven't met with P&Z to find out what the requirements are on that yet. This is the base model, the 2-bedroom model that is kind of the traditional plan that we would do. And you can see it's a shotgun style. It's got a 6-foot front porch, a covered front porch. Then you go into the living room, there's a dining area, and then to the kitchen. And you can see that the patio on the side, that's the connection of the 2 units. And then of course the stairway to the upstairs. This is the 3-bedroom unit. It's going to have a bedroom on the bottom. The bathroom will be moved around to where we can have the laundry room on the first floor for those who can't climb stairs. And the master will have an attached bathroom that's also accessible from the dining area, so that it's a guest bath and a master bath in one. This is the upstairs of both models. It's common to both floor plans. You can see it's 2 fairly large bedrooms and a bathroom. It's where we put the HVAC and the water heaters under the steps. So these are some pictures of these units actually built. They're not units that we built, but they're the same design pretty much. They're a little different, but not much. So I'll scroll through them kind of quick so you can kind of see. You can tell they're finished pretty nice. They're not cheap. I mean, they're granite countertops and LVT flooring and stainless appliances. So they're nice finishes inside. This is the upstairs. To talk a little bit about what's available right now. And I just ran this report a little while ago, and this is what's available in the 150 to 185 price range right now. And our base model is 150. The 3-bedroom model is going to be around 185. So in that area right now, as you can see, this is a 15-mile radius of Midway. There's nothing in Midway, nothing in Versailles, 2 in Georgetown, 1 in Frankfurt. All the rest are in Lexington. And at that price point, you're looking at pretty old homes. And this is how bad the inventory on the market right now is in Central Kentucky. It's just horrendously low. And this particular area price point is the worst of any of the price points that we have. This is the one that there's just no housing in, because a lot of the employees at places like Toyota or Lakeshore that, that are making the household incomes 50 grand or so, these are the houses they're looking for to start in, and they're just not available. And there's almost no new construction going on that fits into this price range. I went through a little bit of affordable housing information, and I guess if you were to pin it down to a definition, HUD says that it's housing that costs less than 30% of the median income for that area. Well, the median income in Midway is around 60,000. So I kind of ran some numbers that puts an affordable house, according to HUD, at 185 grand in Midway. There's other things that factor into that, the customer's credit rating, all those kind of things. But the basics, utilities, payments, insurance, the whole bit, it comes out to real close to about 185. So we're coming in under that from 150 to 185. So we're going to be on just a little bit under the median on the affordable houses. We did the numbers, 40,000 a year, assuming that their income ratio is good. 40,000 a year with nothing down will qualify to buy one of these houses. And all the regular mortgage options are out there, whether it's RHS or USDA, FHA, conventional. They're all the same ones that any other home buyer would be looking at. The payment with the HOA fee, PITI, PMI, everything included, it's about $1,050 at today's rates. And also KHP or KHA that does the affordable welcome home funds, their down payment assistance funds, they still have money available. And because there's so many fewer houses now in this price range, they're not going through those funds as fast as they normally do, because normally it's gone in March. But that's something that possibly, if the timing's right, that the buyers could look into. I went through some different information on affordable housing, even though it's not really my area. I just am pretty convinced that this project is as far as a project that people could afford to buy a house in. There's nothing like this going on right now, except for maybe the other builder who's developing this same thing in Jessamine County, but he's got a much smaller area that he's working in. Went through the job base in Midway, how much it's grown with the factories and everything that have opened in the industrial park. And we don't really have housing for those people. So we're sending all that money out of town. If we could get them, some of them at least, to live in Midway, that money stays in Midway and turns over and over. Plus, we have more walkability, biking, and less commute time. These are some of the best practices things that, as I went through, to show what they're saying is the way to get affordable housing. And I think most all of these, we check those boxes. So it's something, I put the link in there so that you could take a look at that in more depth, because it's a pretty good article. So this is the Jessamine County development I was telling you about. These are actually built. This is the front feeding driveways. And so the interior of our project would look similar to this. I don't think their landscaping's done. And of course they used a brown fence and we're going to do white fences. So it looks a little more picket fence like. You can tell that in comparison to a traditional townhouse, these have a separation of doors 24 to 28 feet. Well, in a typical townhouse, it's separated by 18 feet. So even though the building envelope is a little smaller, these look bigger than a traditional townhouse. And then because of that, the demand for these, both in the 8 or 12 that have been built in Fayette County and the dozen or so that have built in Jessamine County, the resale value is as high as any single family home in the last 3 years, and very high per square foot. So I think it's a good investment. People seem to want these. They're in demand. And I don't know if it's because it doesn't have a common wall that is heated on both sides or what the issue is, but they seem to like this product, and that's why we're looking to do this product. This is kind of just a comparison to a traditional townhouse. These are the townhouses that are in Midway right now. And as you can see, those do not fit the style of Midway. I mean, they're great. They provide a housing for people, but if you're looking for something that fits the style and character of Midway, that's not it. And ours are, I think, a little more closer to what that would be. These are the ones that are over in Versailles next to the middle school. They've got some garden homes, but these are the townhouse style that they've got over there. And they're nice looking. They're just not, I don't think they capture that Midway shotgun house style that ours capture. These are several of the narrow shotgun style houses that are around Midway now. And if you look at those, the style wise, it's very similar to what we're proposing. So I'm kind of excited about the product that we're doing, because for one, it's unique, and the second, it looks more like Midway than any other townhouse would. That's about all I've got. So I'll take questions from anybody. Let me see if I can unshare my screen. All right.
So let me kind of summarize for you what some of the concerns or that were expressed in the questions that were sent to me earlier today are. One is the question about scale and density, and the concern that does not, in fact, reflect the type of neighborhoods in Midway. But what you're pointing out is that, am I correct that you're saying that there are places in Midway where this style of home with this distance separation is common? Is that correct?
Sure. Take a drive up down Gratz Street, and you'll see quite a bit down Stevens Street, or many of the streets around town. You'll see houses that are shotgun houses, very narrow lots, and it's not uncommon.
Okay.
I'm not saying that this is not a dense project, but it is an
Okay.
infill project. It's not a sprawl project. It actually avoids sprawl by giving us housing opportunities that we can do in an infill project to avoid the necessity of sprawl.
Okay. There are quite a few questions around environmental impact. So these covered a series of areas such as stormwater runoff and drainage affecting potential for flooding on adjacent properties, noise and light trespass onto adjacent properties, concerns about buffering and the need to buffer from adjacent residential neighbors, and finally, traffic issues. So you want to just kind of think, maybe perhaps start off with the issue of stormwater runoff and drainage, because that land does slope.
It does.
Yeah.
And I can tell you from experience that ever since Northridge was developed, there's been water issues in that area right there. And we think we've identified why there's a water issue there, why it isn't draining like it's designed. And we think that we can not only not make it any worse with our design, but that we can improve the water problems that those property owners already have. And if we can do that, because we do own the detention or retention basin for the Ball Home subdivision, the Northridge subdivision. And in owning that, we can actually go up there and improve the engineering of that drainage field, and maybe improve how much water gets put out in a given amount of time on the grocery store there and the houses in that backside of Northridge, the original Northridge. So as far as traffic, I'm probably not qualified to answer that question because I haven't looked at a single number on traffic count. So I don't know the screening issue. There is going to be some screening along those property lines back there. I'm not sure what they're going to ask us to do back there, but we've already agreed that what they come up with as a requirement, we will comply with. As far as there's just a short area where there's not already buffer there.
Okay.
It's maybe 100 feet. So we will definitely, not only for the benefits of the neighbors, but the benefit of our development as well.
Okay. And noise and light trespass was something else that people raised, that with the higher density development that there might be, would you be let me just ask it this way. Would you be following the standard expectation of downward facing lights to reduce light pollution?
I'm sure we would. I can't answer that question. I don't even know that streetlights is a requirement. That's kind of outside my scope a little bit on this. So what comes back from technical review, I guess we'll look at it then and know. But I would think that because Woodford County has a light pollution ordinance, that will be addressed by the technical review and the planning commission staff as well. So, but
And
I mean, I don't really anticipate a lot of lights except for maybe a back porch light that's going to be visible to any neighbor, but I can't say that for sure.
yeah. Okay. There was also a question or an issue raised about, are you planning on integrating in any green construction ideas for this development?
Some, but probably not the ones that commonly would be thought of, like the footprint of the house. That alone is a savings of a lot of different materials and work. So it does shrink that footprint a little bit. As far as some of the other, probably not like siding or any of the, probably not, because of the expense of some of those materials would kind of, we'd lose the affordable part of this project. We will have, I mean, high efficiency heating and air, you know, it's going to be better than something that's 10 years old for sure. And it's pretty efficient heat pump systems. Of course, the building code for insulation values has gone up dramatically in the last 2 decades. So the insulation value in these homes, just following code, is going to be far superior to that we were building 20 years ago even.
Okay. And sorry, I'm typing and looking down. How do you see this fitting in with the adjacent neighborhoods?
I actually don't think it's going to be negative for the adjacent neighborhoods. There's not going to be access except for one access and to the development that does not go through Northridge, either of the Northridges. And it pretty much drops out right there in a commercial area where there's a grocery store and a body shop and, you know, those different things. And Northridge Drive is typically not that heavily a traffic street. I mean, I'm sure it is when school's going in or out, but just guessing at the number of traffic counts, the number of drives from the house, I don't see us adding that much of an impact on the traffic situation right there, because it's virtually nothing right now. So as far as any other negative impacts, I just don't see, and I'm a real estate agent too. So, I mean, I can judge this from a property value issue standpoint. And I just don't see this being a negative. We have a lot of different styles and levels of housing in Midway now. adding another type of housing or some more options is not going to hurt property values in other neighborhoods that you don't even have to go through to get to this, and they don't have to go through this to get to their house. So it's actually a compliment, I think, to the area and not a negative to any particular subdivision.
Okay, okay. And then the other question was around, and maybe this is because you've answered the concern about property values and fit with adjacent neighborhoods. I think your PowerPoint highlights, there was some questions about design and aesthetics of the development. And I think you've addressed that, you know, people have a sense of what's going to be happening. So let me ask them, and for most of the other questions, you've already answered this. So let me ask if the members of the Affordable Housing Committee have any questions. If that's okay with you, Mike.
It is.
Hey, Mike, thanks for your time tonight. Zon Hofstetter, my name is there. It is a weird name, so now I've said it out loud so you can say it. Were you saying that this particular plan is 60 units, but the max under the zoning could be 82? Or were you saying that the size of this development is not yet known and could be as much as 82?
No, the maximum number of units would be allowed in R3 would be 82.
Right. Okay. But
We're
your
asking
plan
for-
does not call for 83. Your
No,
plan
it
calls
calls
for
for 68.
68, not 60. Okay. Okay.
I'm not sure where the 60 number came from, but it was between 66 and 68, depending on how we did that front corner. So,
Okay. I may have other questions, but I just want to get clarity on that point. I'll see who else has something.
Somebody else have from the Housing, Affordable Housing Committee have any questions? I know that, Mike, I'm going to ask you this, if you're comfortable. There are people who are not on the Affordable Housing Committee on this phone, on this Zoom meeting. Would you be willing to allow some of them to ask a question also?
yeah, I don't see why not.
Okay.
I might not be able to answer them all, obviously,
Yeah.
but.
And I want to reinforce, this is a very unusual situation because it is very rare, if not never, that a developer is willing to have a conversation or listen to the issues of community members prior to the submission of a final development plan. So I'm asking people if they are wanting to ask a question, please do that in the format that is where you're asking for information and you understand that at this point, the development plan is not finalized and has not been approved or had any kinds of review by the Planning Commission nor the Technical Review Committee. So let's just be polite about this and be generous. So does anybody else have any questions? Al, I saw that you were on this. Might you have a question? Or John?
I'll pass for now. Thanks, Lori.
Okay,
Yeah, me too. Thanks for asking, Lori.
okay, just because I know you write the news story, so just wanted to make sure. Anybody else have any questions?
Lori, I will read a few that have come in.
Sure,
Um,
because I haven't seen those.
Well, this is just on the feed, and I'm just reading the ones that haven't really already been talked about here.
Okay,
A few of these have already been talked about, so if somebody missed it, I just encourage them to go back and rewatch later. One is from Deborah Shockley. She's a member of the Board of Architectural Review, which is not necessarily pertinent to that, but she is familiar with planning and zoning regulations. She says the property is quite steep. Do you plan to work with the grades instead of trying to level it out?
I do plan on working with the grades as much as we can because every scoop of dirt you move costs money. So, I mean, obviously we would love to not have to do a lot of dirt moving. And it's a trade-off between how much fill you're going to put in the slab versus how much grading you do. It's cheaper to fill the slab in most cases. So especially on that backside where it backs up to the retention basin. There's a little drop off there, so we'll probably, we really can't put basements in these units because it just doesn't show that they would market or they would add any value to them. So probably gonna end up with either deep slabs or crawls on that section. But I'd rather not change the grade any more than absolutely necessary.
Here's another one that I don't think has been addressed, but maybe it has been. It says, this is Crystal T. It says 68 seems like a lot in that area. No yards at all that's what she's asking. Basically, she says no yards at all is my guess. She's basically asking how much of a yard is there on each unit, I think.
Well, the plan that they've submitted, I think, has the minimum required by planning and zoning, which is 25 feet in the front yard and 20 feet in the backyard. And then the side yards come automatically with that breezeway thing there. So it's 28 feet wide and you get a little bit of side yard there too. And the covered breezeway, which is an outdoor space, covered outdoor space. So, and there's going to be some HOA on property in the middle. You can see from that plan that will be open. I don't know if there'll be some kind of access to it or how that's going to work, but there is some vacant space there that we could take advantage of for public use maybe.
Okay. Sarah E writes, Midway has identified a need for affordable housing. That's clear. What's the minimum number of houses you could build and keep it affordable and not a loss for you?
Well, I got to tell you, it's not going to be a loss for us because we wouldn't build them in the first place if we weren't going to make a profit, and nobody would. I mean, but how can we keep it affordable to those people who are making around 40 to 50 grand a year? That's the key. And every time we do anything, whether it's upgrading the siding, the shingles, whatever the case may be, that adds to the price of the house. And when you do that, you quickly get up to the point where you're not really as affordable as you thought you were, and you're just jumping in at the bottom level of Ball Homes and some of the other builders out there that are doing that price range. And that's kind of not our goal. We want to have something that people that maybe couldn't qualify for that $210,000 Ball home, that they could buy a house that they could feel pretty confident would appreciate in value like any other house would. These have shown over the last 4 years to do that. And they've been something that a lot of customers like. So I don't know if I could even put a number on it, on what the point would be to where it would no longer be in that affordable housing area. But I do know that every additional lot that's added decreases the cost to the people who buy each unit. So every change adds money to the price of the house.
Mike, can I just jump, because I was going to ask similar questions. I know I don't want to interrupt Grayson from reading his questions too that people have passed to him. I just want to follow up on this. So assuming that we're not talking about increasing quality of each unit, to make it more expensive per unit for that reason, we're just talking about, and I know you can't answer all these questions definitively. You're doing your best and we appreciate it. I just assuming we're keeping the plan of what each unit looks like as you've already depicted it. And we're just saying, the question is, and assuming that to some extent supply and demand sets whatever price people are going to have to pay for the home. So I mean, all we're ever doing with the price of a home is anticipating what the market price would be, correct? So really the question is just, if it were the case that they would still be affordable if you made 20 or 40 or 68 or 15 or 172, if we're just sort of assuming the market price will work itself out in an affordable range, how many units could be built that would, that would still make it a profitable development for you, such that you would do it at all? I mean, is there any room for fewer units, or is 68 already kind of the number it has to be, in your opinion?
Well, all the numbers we run are based on the 68. And that land was fairly expensive per acre compared to, a lot of other land that is sold around, but well, not Midway, but in Scott County and other parts of Woodford County, it was pretty expensive land. So is it going to add $5,000 to the price of each for every, 5 we take off? I don't have those numbers for you, but I do know that if you go away from this area of density, it's no longer going to be a viable project. And it would be more profitable to build $800,000 houses there than it would, which it's already zoned for, by the way. So if you go much below that number, all of a sudden it's for us, it's more cost efficient to build the big houses like you'd see in Cherry Blossom or out in Fisher's Mill Landing. So
Do you know within the R3 categorization, what would be the minimum? So, I mean, you said you're playing 68, the most you could have as many as 82 under R3. What is the lowest number you could have under R3?
I don't think there's a lower limit set in the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
Mhm.
Not, yeah, I don't. Okay. So,
I mean, if you wanted a lower limit, you'd probably go to a less dense zoning category and not try to lower a particular category.
okay. So,
I mean,
right. Okay. So
So-
your understanding is that the 68 number is already sort of reflective of the density level that would require you to request R3 in the first place. Is that a fair way to put that?
say that one more time.
So you're saying that 68 as a number of units is just, that's the level of density that's requiring you to request an R3 change in the first place. And it's not that you could not, it's not that that's a magic number that it has to be, but it's that is the number that would make this efficient and that would require R3. I mean, I guess the question is why go to R3 as opposed to?
Well, and from my limited review of the ordinance, because I'm not the attorney on this project,
Right.
Townhouses in Woodford County fall naturally into R3. It's just the way the zoning ordinance is set up.
Okay.
So if you're doing townhouses and these are considered townhouses, you're automatically falling into R3. And if you look at R3 around Midway now, huge portion of Midway is already R3. All of Campus Gates, most of Stevens Street, all that area that Northside Drive encompasses on the other side is all R3, even though it's taken up by Park and School now, it was R3. Where the townhouses are Midway, they're all R3. So there's a lot of R3 land in Midway. It's just not being used as R3.
Okay. I'll let Grace, I know he had some other questions coming in and then I might have a couple others depending on how these questions go.
I can answer this one from Amy. She says, can the plan as it is now be put on Facebook or online? We just saw it for a few minutes. Yes, we will put it on our website, Amy. We'll probably put a link on the front page of the website. It's a large file, so I can't load it to Facebook. And then we've got one from Tiffany. She says, is there a possibility that these properties would turn into rentals or Airbnb? I'll at least answer the Airbnb part. Airbnb and a section like that would require conditional use, which requires the owner to live on the property. So I don't know if a lot of people would want to come rent a place that's that small already with the person staying in there. So I think that would preclude it. But to the other part of her question, Mike, is there a possibility that these would turn into rentals?
Can I just point out that, just from my experience with this, that there is no ordinance that says a personally owned property cannot be used for rental purpose, not as an ordinance. Now, the bank and the mortgage might require the owner to reside in the unit, which then brings us to your point about renting it out but that's not so, we just don't really say that. It's only about the financing, I think. Mike, would you agree with that or not?
I don't know the law that well on this, but I do know there's some real issues with trying to deed restrict whether or not you could rent a property that someone buys out. I know in my time on Planning Commission in Scott County, it was kind of a taboo subject. We did not address any limits on whether or not these properties could be rented. Of course, Kentucky state law says that you can only have 3 unrelated adults living in a property. So I guess that's their total restriction on whether or not you can rent it or not, is who actually lives there. But I don't know that we would even be willing to do that, because if you didn't deed restrict it, well, they would just lie to you and then tell you they're going to be owner occupants and then not be. What good would that do anyone? So
this is from Susan. It says, did Northside Homes buy the entire water basin that borders Cottage Grove or just the portion that was owned by the Graves?
it was my opinion that the Graves owned all of it. So if they didn't, no, we only bought what the Graves owned.
I think what she's referring to is that at one point in time, I believe Jack Kane and Jack Graves owned that like half and half or something like that. But it's my understanding the Graves bought that out over time. I don't think the Canes own any of that anymore, to my understanding.
Yeah, I think that's correct. I think that was necessary to keep 10-acre minimum, which was the agricultural exemption limit. And so there was a reason for that. And of course, we don't have it anymore, by the way. So the tax base goes up.
I'm looking at other questions here that have not been addressed already.
I think you kind of got them. I just want to go back and just kind of rehear, make sure I got it clear in my mind. That what's affordable, I mean, that you have looked at affordability, Mike, in setting your price and in your design so that these homes can be purchased by someone, a family that has a median, has a family income of between $40,000 and $50,000. Is that correct?
My numbers show that they could qualify as long as they didn't have a lot of other debt and their debt to income ratio was good. They could qualify for that with nothing down. If they had down payment, they could qualify with even lower income.
Okay, thank you.
There's another question here. And again, I'm trying to ask the questions that haven't already been addressed in some form or another. Let me find it again. This is Sarah again. She says, are there then no restrictions that a real estate group or individual could buy up a cluster of homes and rent them out?
I don't think so. I mean, owning a rental isn't really considered running a business on the properties. It's still residential home for someone, even though it's rented. So I don't know that. And if you deed restricted that in, if it was even legal to do so, I don't know that it is, but if you did deed restrict that in, you've just destroyed their equity that they could build up over years. So the whole point of them buying a property instead of renting one is gone, because they can't enjoy the equity they get, because now they've lost part of their ownership, which would be the ability to sell it to the person of their choosing.
Do you, to your knowledge, Mike, I mean, I guess to your knowledge, does this method of deed restricting things to try to prevent renting from happening, like as a matter of law or contract, is that
I've never seen it once.
okay? It's not a common thing that people try. So, I mean, essentially, you know, we're not
I
saying.
don't know that it would pass as far as a law issue goes. I don't know that you could do that.
Right, sure. I mean, and there's various things you can restrict. I mean, you know, and some things you can't. Then the law sorts all that out. But to your knowledge, this is, you know, this idea of, well, we'll let you build a development, but you have to make it so that you can't rent it out. But yeah, that's just not a thing that happens, to your knowledge.
No, I've never seen that happen.
Okay.
Now, I
But the
do know
HO
that preference is given to owner occupant buyers, especially when you're dealing with Fannie Mae and even habitat houses that get repossessed, those kind of things. There is some preference given, and it's different depending on who it is, but they do give preference to owner occupants.
Is the price point that you're trying to shoot for building these, you know, the 150 to 185K, is that a price point that's like artificially low to the market such that it would motivate a mass buyer to come in and swoop a bunch up because you're like you're selling them too cheaply? Or is this just the market price that you're shooting for?
No, it's the market price, and it's based off square footage. You know, square footage right now is pretty solid at 150 for new construction and up. I mean, it goes up to 250 in certain areas, but for the basic house, it's around 150 right now. And these are going to fall in that 150 range. But if we start changing a lot of things in the design and how many's there, all of a sudden our cost increase, which means the price of the house increases. So, but it's market priced. So it's based on the square footage you'd find in the rest of the market right now.
Got it. So, Freeland, were you going to jump in, sir?
Yeah, I have two questions. Could the HOA restrict provide any restriction for owner occupancy? Would that be legal? I mean, you probably can't answer that because you're not an attorney.
Yeah, I've looked into it and can't find any places where that's done or been allowed to be done. Now the HOA in this particular project is going to be a pretty strong HOA. They're in fact going to be taking care of all the outside maintenance as far as landscaping and grass. They're going to take care of the roads. They're going to be very strict on what, leaving stuff in the yard, parking in the street, all those kind of things. It's going to be pretty strictly enforced. So, and the reason for that is because at that point, it barely matters whether it's a tenant or an owner, because the outside is going to be maintained by the HOA. So the typical rundown look that you might get in certain rental areas, you're not going to see here because you won't see it on the outside. That's maintained by the HOA. And that was on purpose.
Right. My next question is, just prior to COVID, our committee was hoping to get a market analysis of sort to see exactly what is the demand for this area. How did you arrive at, other than the economics of your project, how did you arrive at the need for 68 units of this type in Midway?
Well, that one slide I showed you showing what's available in that price range right now in all of central Kentucky, that's astoundingly low. I mean, it's amazingly low. We haven't seen inventory at those levels as long as I can remember. And I first got my real estate license when I was 20. So it's been a long time, and I've never seen the inventory that low. And you can check any city around Scott County, Fayette County, all around. They're just not enough inventory, and they don't expect enough inventory, especially in that price range, for years to come. And they talk about this missing middle. That's the missing middle. Nobody is building in that middle anymore because it's not cost effective unless you're doing something that's unique like what we're proposing here. So, and I'm talking about that one under 185 price range.
Mike, here's one. We'll take one last question.
By the way, before you go on, Grayson, we did some research. The last time the comprehensive plan was updated in Woodford County, I think was 2018. Midway has not issued one single new construction building permit in that time. So that's, you'll see that Midway is not growing, whether you could argue whether or not we should or shouldn't, but on average, what they estimated in the comp plan that we needed as we grew, we're not keeping up with that in Midway at all. And then with all the new business that has come into the industrial park, we're just losing all that money. We're missing the boat and having that money turn over in the town instead of them driving back to Lexington or Georgetown with that money. So
Please restate that again, because I think that's an important point for people to hear.
the part about sending the money away.
No, since the last update of the comprehensive plan, and I think that was 2015, 2016,
2018, I think.
2018, you said not one building permit.
Not one new construction building permit has been issued in Midway in the city limits. And if you look around, because we've looked around a lot, there are only a couple lots in Midway that would be available in the short term. And I don't even know there's any more than that in the long term. I've talked to some of the people that own land on the periphery of Midway, and they're not turning loose of that land anytime soon. And so this is probably the last infill project that Midway will have, besides maybe one or two lots up on Stevens Street at the Mill Road Place. There's a couple lots still up there for sale. But other than this, there's no other land in Midway to develop that is foreseeable in the future to be sold. So right now, with not having any new houses built in Midway in such a long time, and all the jobs that have been, I mean, good job, Grayson, because you brought a lot of jobs in with Lakeshore and all the stuff. Well, there's no place for these workers to live. In fact, when we moved here in 1979, the reason we didn't move to Midway is there was nothing on the market that would house 5 kids and 2 adults. And so we had to move out on Ironworks in Scott County. And of course, my parents still live there today.
Mike, you've been very gracious with your time, and again, to take questions from the public, which wasn't actually planned, is appreciated as well. So if you don't mind, I'll ask two more and then we will wrap up. I will say that I'm glad to see the number of eyes that are on this. This is way more people watching tonight than typically watch our council meetings. I guess this must be more interesting. Deborah says, since you and your wife are both realtors, I assume you'll keep control of all sales of the homes, or do you intend to allow outside realtors to sell the homes as well?
She must be a realtor. But we're both members of LBAR, and LBAR's code of ethics require us to list houses and make them available to other agents to sell as well. So she can feel confident in that. As a member of LBAR, she's going to get her shot too.
I actually don't think this person is a realtor, believe it or not.
Oh, really?
But I'm sure there are some realtors who are interested in that question, though.
Yeah, I'm sure there are.
And the last one from Mike is he agrees that inventory is low, but he'd like to see data that shows there are people wanting to purchase at that price point in this community. Have you all had people already reach out on interest, or is that too early to tell?
I could have sold them all in the last month. That's the demand that we're facing. I get calls every single day, and from people in Midway and outside Midway that want to reserve. I can't reserve them when we don't have lots platted. Once we get lots platted, we can start doing that, but I can't do it now. But I could take reservations for all of them.
It's arithmetic, right? I mean, if the median income is $60,000 in Midway, then, you know, roughly half the people, that's how medians work, make less than that and probably can't afford $250,000 houses. So if they're interested in owning a house, it's got to be one that's less than the current level we generally offer. I mean, that would just stand to reason, I would think. But
yeah,
not to editorialize. I would just think that would
most, if they're in Midway, they have a place to live, and either they're renting or they already own it. If they're renting, which is a small group of people, but to be honest, several of the inquiries I've gotten are people who would want to buy it to either rent it out, or they're going to sell their bigger house and move to a smaller one. So.
And let me just ask you, there are going to be some single story lots or only 2 stories?
Only 2 stories.
Okay, gotcha.
In the plan right now.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Grayson?
No, I want to thank, if there's not anything else from the Affordable Housing Committee, I want to thank the Affordable Housing Task Force members, Zahn, Freeland, Susan, for sitting in tonight, asking their thoughtful questions. I want to thank everybody who followed along on Facebook and asked very thoughtful questions. Thanks to everybody. Every question I saw was good. A couple I just thought were already addressed. So if you didn't hear your question asked, I would try to go back to the meeting. I will give John McGarry and Al Cross a chance to ask Mike any questions, if that's okay with you, Mike.
Sure.
But let's go ahead and wrap up, or let's do that first, then we'll wrap up. Does John or Al want to ask Mike any questions?
I didn't have one for Mike, but I had one for you. Will this be a recording of this be posted?
Yes. So this will be available for replay here on the Facebook page that people are watching. It'll also be available on our YouTube channel, which is also Midway Government Streaming Meetings. We'll have it by the end of the night, and we will put a link to that YouTube channel on our Facebook pages. I mean, on our website as well.
And here is a question for Mike. What is the next step at the Planning Commission Technical Review Committee, and do you have a date for that?
It is, I think, from what I've been told, technical review would be 8 days from today. And I think the Planning Commission meeting is scheduled for June 17th. I don't know if we have a location yet, but I think it's tentatively scheduled for June 17th.
Our city engineer, David Brown, with HMB, is actually the current appointee we have to the Technical Review Committee. I know a few folks have had concerns about runoff, for example, and that is something that he will provide feedback to TRC if he sees any issues, as well as the members of TRC. So I just want folks to know we have someone on City of Midway staff who looks after things like that as well. I do know the planning and zoning actual public hearing, which is what I think most people are probably most interested in, other than tonight. That is likely to be scheduled soon. We'll let you know as soon as we have the exact date. It will likely be the middle to, a little bit past the middle of June. It will be in Midway. It'll be a special meeting, meaning that it'll be the only thing on the agenda. So we want to thank P&Z for agreeing to do that and to coming to Midway. It will most likely be at the Midway Presbyterian Church Fellowship Hall. It's a large room where folks can spread out. We can open doors for more ventilation as well. There will be COVID protocols in place, of course. So folks will need to come to participate to that in person. We will let you know as soon as that is scheduled. John, did you have any questions for Mike?
No questions about what went on tonight. I think it was a great meeting, and Mike, I think you did the community a service by showing up when you didn't have to talk about this stuff. But I wanted to ask a favor. Would I be able to use, one of your slides or what this layman would refer to as the overhead look at what I assume you've submitted to P&Z?
Sure. Yeah, in fact, the reason that, and I can send you probably a better quality picture for that overhead slide, because if you go to P&Z, you're going to get an uncolored version, which doesn't tell you truthfully where the grass is, where the concrete is, and that kind of thing. And the colored one that I put on there does tell you all those things. So I'd be more than happy to send that to you in a PDF file that would be a little better quality than trying to screenshot it off of the PDF I sent.
That would be great. And one of what appeared to be photos of the way, the houses are going to, something showing the space between the townhomes might be also very good.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything except for those pictures of the ones that are already built.
Okay.
That's probably the best shot I have of that, because it was kind of covered up in landscaping on the main picture. But I'll send you a copy of that picture too, the streetscape picture, and you do with what you want.
Thank you much.
All right.
Mike, thanks for your willingness to do that, and I'll ask that you do that for the Midway Messenger too.
Okay. I don't know if I have both your emails.
Screen
I think
grabs
Al,
for-
I've got yours, but
Yep.
I don't know if
I'm
I got.
gonna go ahead and close this and let Grayson have the last words, but I want to thank everyone for being so reasonable and so understanding and willing to engage in a very a very fruitful conversation around this issue. Thank you, Mike, for doing this. And thank you for the people who came on. Grayson?
Thank you so much, Lori, for moderating this tonight. Did a wonderful job. Thank you, Mike, for agreeing to answer questions to the public. The last thing I'll say, I think John McGarry's email is just john@woodfordsun.com.
Okay.
It sounds like you already have Al's email. Other than that, thank everybody, and we'll close tonight. Appreciate everybody's time. Have a great night.
Thank you all very
Thank you,
much. I
Mike.
Thank you.
appreciate the opportunity.